The Helios laboratory section fell silent as Commander Chen replayed the signal for the 5th time. The scratchy transmission echoed against the metal walls. Critical situation. Overwhelming hostile force. Request immediate military response. Her science officer, Dr. Raj Patel, leaned closer to the display, his brow furrowed. The signal degradation suggests it's been traveling for at least 70 years, he said, adjusting his spectacles. But the encryption is unmistakably human military grade, colonial war era. Chen nodded, her eyes never leaving the waveform analysis. The question is, who sent it? She pulled up the star charts, focusing on the signal's point of origin. There's nothing out there. No registered colonies, no outposts, not even a survey mission. The laboratory doors hissed open as Ambassador Xolos, the Galactic Concord representative, glided into the room. His translucent appendages shifted color from placid blue to concerned yellow as he observed their work. Commander Chen, I understand you've detected an anomalous signal. The ambassador's translation unit rendered his clicks and whistles into smooth, accentless standard. The captain informed me you believe it's of human origin. Chen straightened her uniform. Not just human, ambassador, military, using protocols that were classified even when they were active. She gestured to the display. Someone out there needs help. The ambassador's appendages rippled. The Concord has no record of human presence in that sector. We've maintained meticulous logs of all member species exploration and colonization efforts for millennia. With all due respect, Ambassador, Chen replied carefully, human history didn't begin when we joined the Concord. Xolos's colors darkened. Are you suggesting your species concealed information during the membership process? That would constitute a serious violation of Concord transparency protocols. Dr. Patel coughed awkwardly, glancing between them. Chen held the ambassador's compound gaze. I'm suggesting that 300 years is a long time, and records can be lost or forgotten. I see. The ambassador's colors shifted to diplomatic neutral. Regardless, protocol dictates we investigate any potential distress signal. However, the Helio Asterisk is a research vessel, not equipped for potential hostilities. We'll log the coordinates and forward them to Concord Security for follow-up. After the ambassador departed, Patel turned to Chen. You know they'll bury this. The Concord doesn't like inconsistencies in their perfect historical record. Chen's jaw tightened, which is why we're not leaving this to them. She pulled a small device from her pocket. A quantum entanglement communicator, military issue, officially decommissioned decades ago. I still have contacts from my Defense Fleet days. That night in her quarters, Commander Chen activated the device, its soft blue glow illuminating her determined face. The connection established instantly despite the vast distance. The benefit of quantum entanglement. Admiral Wei, secure channel established, she said quietly. I'm transmitting data now. She uploaded the signal, along with her analysis and the star charts marking its origin. For several minutes, there was no response. Chen waited, the only sound the soft hum of the ship's environmental systems. Finally, Wei's voice emerged, gravelly with age but sharp with authority. Eliza, what you found? He paused. Get back to Earth immediately. Whatever excuse you need to make. Say nothing to the Concord representatives. Sir, what is this? Who sent that signal? Another pause. Something we hoped would never be needed. His voice lowered further. Protocols are being activated that haven't been used in centuries. You've found the trigger for Operation Nemesis. The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at the device. Whatever lay beyond the Perseus arm had just set into motion something beyond her imagining. Something humanity had kept hidden, even from its allies for 3 centuries. She looked out her viewport at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, humans had been fighting and dying, alone, for decades. And now, finally, Earth was answering. The Security Council chamber, buried 2 kilometers beneath New Geneva, hummed with nervous energy as the 12 highest-ranking military and civilian leaders of humanity sat in stunned silence. The holographic projection of the signal rotated slowly above the central table, its encrypted patterns now fully decoded. The authentication codes are genuine. Confirmed General Yasmin Curry, head of Intelligence Division. Her weathered face remained impassive, but her fingers tapped an anxious rhythm on the polished obsidian table. They matched the Black Dawn protocols used exclusively during the final phase of the colony wars. Defense Minister Ibarra leaned forward, her silver-streaked hair catching the light from the hologram. Those codes were purged from all systems after unification. They shouldn't exist anymore. And yet they do, Admiral Wei replied, his voice steady despite the implications. He gestured, and the hologram shifted to display stellar coordinates. The signal originates from a system designated only as XC2197 in our charts. No recorded human presence, no scheduled expeditions. Could it be a hoax? Asked Finance Director Tanaka. Some old colonial war relic activated by accident. Wei shook his head. The message included biometric verifications. Whoever sent this knew exactly what they were doing and had the highest security clearance of the pre-unification era. Security Council Chair Harrison rose from his seat, his tall frame casting a long shadow. Admiral Wei, you've brought this to our attention for a reason. What exactly are you proposing? Wei's eyes met each council member's gaze before he spoke. I am formally requesting activation of Protocol Nemesis. The chamber erupted in protests. Minister Ibarra's voice cut through the chaos. That protocol was established as a doomsday option. We assured the Concord when we joined that such measures were dismantled. We assured them the weapons were dismantled, Wei corrected. The ships, however, were merely archived. Chair Harrison silenced the room with a raised hand. For the newer members of this council, perhaps Admiral Wei should explain exactly what Protocol Nemesis entails. Wei nodded and activated another hologram. The image of Earth's solar system appeared, but with additions not shown on any public star chart. Scattered throughout the system, represented by pulsing red markers, were dozens of hidden facilities. When Earth unified and joined the Galactic Concord, we publicly decommissioned our military fleet as a gesture of peace, Wei explained. What we didn't reveal was that our most advanced vessels were placed in specialized storage facilities, maintained by automated systems and a skeleton crew of personnel who rotate every decade. The hologram zoomed in on Luna, revealing vast underground hangars. The deadliest weapons humanity ever created. Ships designed with singular purpose during our darkest hours. Kept ready, just in case. In case of what? Whispered one of the younger council members. In case we were wrong about the universe being a benevolent place, Wei answered grimly. Director Tanaka shook his head in disbelief. The sheer cost of maintaining this fleet in secret for 3 centuries. A fraction of our defense budget, laundered through 17 different black projects annually, Wei explained. Each administration has been briefed on a need-to-know basis. Minister Ibarra's expression hardened. If the Concord discovers this deception, if the signal is genuine, Wei interrupted. What's coming may make the Concord's diplomatic protests seem trivial by comparison. The council chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Chair Harrison finally spoke. We will vote. Protocol Nemesis requires unanimous approval. One by one, the council members placed their palms on the biometric readers embedded in the table. 12 green lights illuminated in sequence. Protocol Nemesis is activated, Harrison announced solemnly. May whatever gods still watch over humanity forgive us if we're wrong. Admiral Wei immediately opened a secure channel on his neural implant. This is Admiral Wei. Authentication code. Thermopylae. 77 Echo. Initiate awakening sequence. All custodian crews to battle stations. The sleepers rise. Throughout the solar system, in hidden facilities on Luna, Mars, Europa, and within the asteroid belt, massive doors that hadn't moved in centuries began to open. The observation deck of the Retribution offered a panoramic view of Earth's night side, city lights tracing the contours of continents like luminous veins. Commander Chen stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching as the last of the combat fleet materialized from their hidden moorings across the solar system. The ships moved with eerie silence, their stealth systems rendering them nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. "It's breathtaking," murmured Lieutenant Commander Hikaru Sato as he joined her at the viewport. "I trained on simulations of these vessels my entire career, but seeing them in person..." He shook his head in wonder. Chen nodded, studying the deadly elegance of the fleet. Unlike the rounded, utilitarian designs favored by the Concorde, these ships featured aggressive angles and predatory silhouettes. The smallest corvettes resembled arrowheads, while the larger destroyers and cruisers extended like bladed weapons. The dreadnoughts, including the Retribution, resembled ancient predators, their hulls adorned with sensor arrays that gave the impression of watchful eyes. 97 warships, she said quietly. The single largest human combat force assembled since the colony wars, and not a soul outside this fleet knows they exist. Admiral Wei's voice came through her neural implant. "Commander Chen, report to the bridge. Final preparations are underway." The command deck of the Retribution buzzed with controlled activity as crew members, all veterans of Earth's shadow forces, performed final systems checks. Holographic displays showed the fleet's formation, while others monitored Concorde communications to ensure their departure remained undetected. Admiral Wei stood at the central command station, his face illuminated by the tactical displays. "Status report," he demanded as Chen took her position. "All vessels report ready, Admiral," replied Captain Dmitry Volkov, the fleet's tactical coordinator. "Weapons systems online, stealth protocols engage." The Concorde diplomatic delegation remains occupied with the cultural festival in New Geneva. And our cover story. A minor radiation leak at the Jupiter Research Station, Chen confirmed. "All civilian traffic has been rerouted. We have a 72-hour window before questions start being asked." Wei's expression remained impassive, but Chen recognized the subtle tension in his shoulders. They had served together for 15 years before his promotion to admiral. She knew the weight of command bearing down on him. 97 ships, over 30,000 personnel, all committed to a mission based on a mysterious signal. "Commander Chen," Wei said quietly as he stepped closer to her station, "I want your honest assessment. Is this the right call?" Chen considered the question carefully. "Sir, in my 20 years of service, I've never encountered a Black Dawn protocol transmission. If someone activated that signal, they did so knowing exactly what it would trigger. Either we're facing a threat serious enough to warrant this response, or someone has gone to extraordinary lengths to draw out Earth's hidden fleet." She met his gaze steadily. "Either way, we need to know." Wade nodded, seemingly satisfied. He turned to address the bridge crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to embark on an unprecedented mission. For 3 centuries, humanity has presented itself to the galaxy as a peaceful member of the Concorde. Today, we reveal another face of our species, one we hoped would never be needed." He gestured to the navigation officer. "Set course for the classified fold point beyond Neptune's orbit." The Retribution led the fleet in perfect formation, accelerating with barely a whisper from its advanced propulsion systems. As they approached Neptune, a series of coordinates were transmitted across the Armada. "Approaching designated coordinates," announced the navigation officer. "Unregistered fold point head ahead." Wei exchanged a final glance with Chen before giving the command. "Engage fold drive." Space itself seemed to ripple before them, tearing open to reveal a tunnel of swirling energy, a hyperspatial pathway deliberately omitted from all official charts. One by one, the ships of humanity's secret armada slipped into the fold point, vanishing into the unknown. The Retribution entered last, its massive form disappearing in a flash of light that faded quickly, leaving no trace that 97 warships had ever been there. 3 days later, they emerged into uncharted space. Major Tariq Hassan pressed forward against the howling winds of the rogue planet, the specialized thermal suit barely managing to keep the lethal cold at bay. His 12-person strike team moved in tight formation, each member carrying enough firepower to level a small city. Specialist Zhang's scanner beeped persistently, guiding them toward the signal source. Temperature holding at -160 Celsius, reported Lieutenant Reed, the team's environmental specialist. Atmospheric composition is mostly nitrogen with trace methane. No natural protection from stellar radiation. And yet someone chose to live here, Hassan observed, his voice steady despite the brutal conditions. The beam from his helmet light cut through the darkness, illuminating ice crystals dancing in the air like tiny daggers. They approached the mountain range, its jagged silhouette barely visible against the star-filled sky. No sun would ever rise on this wandering world. Zhang stopped abruptly, her scanner displaying new information. Major, I'm detecting artificial materials within the mountain structure. Alloys consistent with human construction techniques, but evolved somehow. Hassan studied the readings over her shoulder. Evolved how? The molecular arrangement is more efficient than anything in our database. It's like someone took our standard construction methods and refined them through centuries of incremental improvements. Specialist Kano, their combat engineer, pointed toward a seemingly solid rock face. There's an entrance concealed there, highly sophisticated. It's radiating a negative thermal signature to match the surroundings. As they approached, automated defense turrets emerged from hidden recesses in the rock. The team froze, weapons raised. The turrets swiveled, targeting lasers painting red dots across their chests. Hold position, Hassan ordered, fighting the instinct to dive for cover. A mechanical voice echoed across the frozen plain. Biological scanning in progress. Human genetic profiles detected. The turrets paused, then retracted. Tertiary authentication required. Verbal passcode. Hassan glanced at his team, confusion evident beneath their faceplates. They had no passcode. After a moment's consideration, he stepped forward and spoke clearly. Black Dawn Protocol. Emergency response to signal XC-2197. Silence stretched for an agonizing 30 seconds. Then, acceptable substitute authentication. Colonial Defense Force recognized. Welcome home, soldiers. The rock face shimmered and disappeared, revealing a massive airlock. As it cycled open, warm air rushed out, creating a momentary fog where it met the frigid atmosphere. Inside, strip lighting activated automatically, illuminating a vast entry chamber carved from the mountain itself. The team removed their helmets as the outer door sealed behind them. By all the stars, whispered Lieutenant Reed as they progressed deeper. This place is enormous. The passage opened into a cavernous hall where thousands of cylindrical pods lined the walls in neat rows, extending upward for at least 50 meters. Each pod contained a human figure, perfectly preserved in suspended animation. Between the rows stood powered-down mechanical exoskeletons of unfamiliar design, combat frames built for enhanced warfare. Cryostasis technology, Kano observed, examining the nearest pod. Advanced beyond anything we use. These people could have been here for centuries. A holographic interface materialized before them, projecting the image of a woman in her 50s, her expression stern but hopeful. Genetic profiles confirmed as Earth-origin human. Welcome, Terran Defense Forces. You have responded to our emergency beacon, initiating revival protocols for command staff. Throughout the chamber, status lights on select pods shifted from blue to green. The revival process had begun. Hassan approached one of the first pods as its transparent cover retracted, revealing a woman with silver-streaked dark hair. Her eyes fluttered open, disoriented at first, then focusing with startling clarity. Dr. Sophia Reyes, according to the pod's identification marker. You came, she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. After all this time, Earth remembers its children. Her gaze drifted to the insignia on Hassan's uniform, and a complex emotion crossed her face. Relief tinged with bitter amusement. Tell me, soldier, does Earth still believe it stands alone in the galaxy? Before Hassan could respond, the facility's lighting flickered as more systems came online. Holographic displays activated throughout the chamber, revealing stellar maps, ship designs, and something that made Hassan's blood run cold, detailed records of systematic extinction events spanning thousands of years. "We have much to show you," Dr. Rice said, struggling to sit up, "and precious little time before they return." The tactical room aboard the Retribution had been converted into an impromptu briefing chamber. Dr. Rice stood before a three-dimensional star map that filled the center of the room, her movements still stiff from centuries in cryostasis. Around her sat the fleet's senior officers, their faces illuminated by the holographic display. "We call them the Void Hegemony," Rice explained, manipulating the projection to reveal a section of space marked with red indicators. "They control territory spanning approximately 2,000 light-years across this galactic sector." Admiral Wei studied the display, his expression unreadable. "And you've been monitoring them for how long?" 312 years, Rice replied. "Ever since our colony ships first encountered them during our exodus from Earth." Commander Chen leaned forward. "Dr. Rice, there's no record of any exodus during the colony wars. No mission to this sector was ever authorized." A thin smile crossed Rice's face. "Authorized? No, but the Ascendancy didn't seek authorization. We sought freedom. Freedom from the constraints Earth was placing on human development." She gestured, and the display shifted to show images of massive biomechanical vessels, organic components seamlessly integrated with technological elements. "The hegemony doesn't think like us. Their consciousness spans centuries. What we consider a lifetime is, to them, barely a moment of consideration." Captain Volkov frowned. "If they're so advanced, how have you survived here for 3 centuries? "We haven't survived," said a new voice. A tall man with auburn hair entered the room, his movements suggesting military training despite his civilian attire. "We've been fighting and dying in cycles." Rice nodded. "Admiral Wei, Commander Chen, this is Colonel Marcus Thorne, our defense coordinator. What he means is that we've developed a pattern. We engage the hegemony forces, suffer losses, retreat back to cryostasis, while our automated systems rebuild, then awaken for the next incursion. We've been through 17 cycles." Colonel Thorne activated a secondary display showing the colony's defensive measures. "Each time, we push our technology further, incorporate what we've learned about their capabilities. But it's always a delaying action. Our population has decreased from 30,000 to just under 8,000. Why not simply leave?" asked Commander Chen. "With your technology, you could have built ships to return to Earth or established colonies elsewhere." "We tried," Rice replied, her voice hardening. "The hegemony tracks hyperspace signatures. The first colony that attempted to flee led them straight to 3 other human outposts we'd established in nearby systems. 12,000 people died in a single day." Admiral Wei's eyes narrowed. "You mentioned other outposts." "The Ascendancy wasn't just one colony," Thorne confirmed. "We established 7 settlements across this sector. This is the last one. And Earth was next," Rice added quietly. "That's why we stayed. That's why we fought. We knew if we fled home, the hegemony would follow. They always follow." Chen exchanged glances with Wei. "That still doesn't explain why you waited 3 centuries to call for help." "Because we only recently confirmed that the hegemony has plotted a course toward Earth regardless," Rice replied, her voice catching. "Our long-range probes detected their scout vessels, mapping a route through the Perseus Arm. We had no choice but to risk activating the emergency protocol." The tactical officer interrupted, her voice tight with urgency. "Admiral, multiple fold space ruptures detected at the edge of the system. Initial readings suggest over 200 vessels." Admiral Wei rose to his feet. "Configuration consistent with Dr. Rice's records of hegemony ships, sir." Wei turned to Rice, his expression grim. It seems your warning about their return was timely, Doctor. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, battle stations. This is not a drill. As the officers rushed to their posts, Reyes caught Chen's arm. Commander, there's something else you need to know. She lowered her voice. The hegemony doesn't just destroy civilizations. They harvest them. Knowledge, technology, genetic material, all absorbed and repurposed. And they've had centuries to study humans from our fallen colonies. What are you saying? Chen asked, though she already suspected the answer. I'm saying they know how we think, Reyes replied. They've been preparing to fight humans for longer than you've been alive. The main view screen on the Retribution's bridge displayed the approaching hegemony fleet in horrifying clarity. The alien vessels bore little resemblance to conventional ships, massive organic mechanical hybrids that seemed to pulse with internal energy. Their hulls featured irregular protrusions that shifted and reconfigured as they advanced, trailing wisps of fold space distortion behind them like phantom limbs. They're arranging into attack formation, reported Lieutenant Sato, his fingers dancing across the tactical display. Three-tiered approach, scout vessels followed by destroyer class, with their capital ships holding position at the rear. Admiral Wei stood at the center of the bridge, projecting calm authority despite the crushing pressure of the moment. Deploy the fleet in hammer and anvil configuration. Cruiser groups Sigma and Tau to form the anvil, destroyer squadrons to form the hammer. Commander Chen studied the tactical projections as the human fleet shifted position. The hammer and anvil was a formation explicitly forbidden in Concord military doctrine due to its aggressive nature, designed not to defend or deter, but to crush an enemy force between overwhelming firepower. All ships report ready, Admiral, she announced. Weapons systems online and targeting solutions plotted. Wei nodded grimly. Let's show them what humanity has been keeping in reserve. He opened the fleet-wide channel. All vessels, execute fire pattern Alpha on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The human fleet erupted with devastating firepower. The anvil ships fired first, controlled quantum singularities, tore through space-time, creating micro-black holes that swallowed hegemony scout vessels whole before collapsing in brilliant flashes of Hawking radiation. Phase-shifted plasma cannons bypassed the aliens' energy shields, their superheated payload striking directly at the organic components of the hybrid vessels. The hammer ships followed immediately, launching relativistic kinetic impactors, essentially hyper-accelerated tungsten rods approaching light speed, that shattered hegemony destroyers into crystalline debris fields. The silent devastation unfolded with terrifying efficiency. Direct hits across their front line, reported Commander Chen, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. Enemy losses at 32% and climbing. The bridge crew exchanged cautious glances of hope. The hegemony had clearly not expected such devastating weaponry. For a moment, it seemed humanity might win the day through sheer surprise and firepower. Then the alien vessels began to change. The surviving hegemony ships pulsed with internal light. Their hulls rippled and reformed, energy shields modulating in frequency and amplitude. When their counterattack came, it was with terrible precision. Energy beams of impossible coherence sliced through 3 human cruisers simultaneously, bypassing shields that had been impenetrable moments before. The dauntless, indomitable, and fearless vanished in expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. They've adapted their weapons to our shield frequencies, Seda reported, his voice tight with disbelief. How could they analyze and counter our technology so quickly? Dr. Reyes warned us. Chen replied grimly. They'd been studying humans for centuries. The Retribution shuddered violently as enemy fire found its mark. Damage reports flooded in from all decks as the massive dreadnought's port shield grid overloaded. Reroute auxiliary power to starboard shields, ordered Admiral Wei. All port side batteries. Concentrate fire on the lead hegemony vessel. Another blast struck the command deck directly. The bridge lurched sideways, artificial gravity briefly failing. Emergency lighting flickered on as primary systems failed. Commander Chen pulled herself up from the deck, ears ringing from the explosion. Through the smoke, she saw Admiral Wei impaled by a support beam that had broken free from the ceiling, blood pooling beneath him. "Admiral!" She rushed to his side, already knowing it was too late. Wei's eyes were open but unseeing, his once commanding presence gone in an instant. The tactical officer's voice cut through the chaos. "Multiple hull breaches, decks 17 through 24. Structural integrity compromised. We're losing containment on the main reactor." Chen straightened, the weight of command settling on her shoulders. "Transfer fleet command to the inevitable," she ordered, her voice steady despite the grief threatening to overwhelm her. "All hands, prepare for emergency evacuation. Helm, plot a withdrawal course to defensive position Delta." As the surviving bridge crew scrambled to obey, Chen took one last look at Admiral Wei's body. "Continue the fight, Commander," he had told her just hours earlier. "No matter what happens, humanity must survive." She keyed her command override into the nearest console. "All ships, this is Commander Chen. Execute tactical retreat to coordinates Delta 7-3. Regroup and prepare for counterattack." As the human fleet disengaged, the hegemony vessels also withdrew, reconfiguring themselves for the next assault. For the first time in recorded history, the Void hegemony had failed to achieve complete victory in an initial engagement, a small victory bought with the lives of thousands. The command deck of the Inevitable had been transformed into a war room. Holographic displays showed the remnants of the human fleet in defensive formation around the rogue planet, while the hegemony forces regrouped at the edge of the system. Commander Chen, now acting admiral, studied the tactical projections with weary eyes. The first engagement had cost them dearly. 28 ships destroyed, 17 damaged beyond immediate repair. "They're analyzing our defensive pattern," reported Captain Volkov, his face haggard from 20 hours without rest. "Based on their movements, we can expect them to attack within 6 hours, likely targeting our weaker port flank." Chen nodded absently, her thoughts racing through possible countermeasures. None seemed adequate against an enemy that could adapt so quickly to any strategy. The door slid open as Major Hassan entered with Dr. Rice and Colonel Thorne. The colonial leaders looked like they'd aged years and days. "The evacuation of non-essential personnel to the underground facility is complete," Hassan reported. "But it's only a temporary solution. If the hegemony breaks through our fleet, they won't stop until every human on this planet is dead or harvested," Thorne finished grimly. Dr. Rice approached the tactical display, studying the hegemony fleet configuration. "We've seen this before," she said quietly. "The pattern they're forming. It's the same approach they used when they destroyed our third colony. They'll focus overwhelming firepower on a single section of our defense, create a breach, then pour through like a flood. Then we need to change the rules of engagement," Chen replied, straightening her spine. "We can't win a conventional battle against superior numbers that can adapt to our tactics." She gestured to a different section of the star map, highlighting a distant point almost at the edge of sensor range. "Doctor, is this what I think it is?" Rice squinted at the coordinates, then inhaled sharply. "Yes, that's the location of their coordination node, essentially a planet-sized computational structure that manages their operations across the galaxy." "Can it be destroyed?" Chen asked bluntly. Colonel Thorne laughed without humor. "We've been trying for centuries. It's deep in hegemony territory, protected by defenses that would annihilate any conventional attack force." "What about an unconventional one?" Chen's eyes fixed on the severely damaged Retribution, now limping at the edge of their formation. "What if we disguised it as a crippled hegemony vessel? Their biomechanical ships emit distinct power signatures when damaged. Could we replicate that?" The colonial leaders exchanged startled glances. "Theoretically," Rice admitted, "we've studied their technology for generations. But even if you got past their outer defenses, what then? The coordination node is massive. Chen turned to Major Hassan. "How do your people feel about a suicide mission, Major?" Hassan's expression remained impassive. "We're already on one, Admiral. Might as well make it count." "What weapon could possibly destroy something that size?" Volkov interjected. A heavy silence fell over the room. Dr. Rice finally broke it, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have something. Something we developed but never deployed because we're still human enough to have lines we wouldn't cross." She activated her personal datapad, displaying schematics for devices that made Chen's blood run cold. Nova bombs. Antimatter weapons capable of triggering stellar-level reactions. Weapons so devastatingly powerful that humanity had banned their theoretical development under penalty of extinction. "You built these?" Chen asked, struggling to keep horror from her voice. "We built them," Rice confirmed. "After watching 6 of our 7 colonies die, after losing tens of thousands of our people, yes, we built them. But we never used them because we knew once that line was crossed, we could never go back." Chen studied the schematics, then looked around at the faces of her officers and the colonial leaders. "If we don't use them now, there may not be a humanity left to judge us." She straightened her uniform and faced the group. "Captain Volkov, begin preparations to modify the Retribution's power signature. Colonel Thorne, work with our engineers to transfer the Nova bombs aboard. Major Hassan." She paused, meeting his steady gaze. "Assemble a volunteer strike team. Make it clear this is likely one way." "And the rest of the fleet?" Volkov asked. Chen turned back to the tactical display, where the hegemony forces continued their ominous approach. "We give them the fight of their lives. We hold the line until Hassan's team completes their mission, or we die trying." As the officers dispersed to their duties, Dr. Rice lingered. "You realize what you're doing," she said quietly. "If this works, you'll be remembered as both saviors and monsters." Chen looked at the casualty reports still scrolling across a nearby screen. "History can judge us however it wants, Doctor. I just want to ensure there are humans left to write it." The inevitable shuddered as another hegemony energy blast struck its reinforced shields. Acting Admiral Chen gripped the command chair as damage reports flooded the tactical display. The remaining human fleet fought with desperate ingenuity, using the debris field as cover and executing complex maneuvers that the larger hegemony vessels couldn't match. Port Squadron reports critical damage to 3 destroyers. Lieutenant Sato announced, his uniform stained with blood from a head wound he had refused treatment for. "Enemy forces are pressing on all fronts." Chen nodded grimly. "Order the Artemis battle group to reinforce the port flank. Have the Orion Squadron execute pattern Echo 7. She checked the chronometer. Hassan's strike team had been gone for 4 hours. They needed to buy more time. The main view screen showed the devastation across the battlefield. Human ships fought with everything they had, their weapons leaving brilliant scars across the void. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, vessels winked out of existence, their crews falling silent forever. "Reactor containment failing on the Triumphant," reported the communications officer. "Captain Rodriguez is ordering evacuation." Before the evacuation could complete, the cruiser detonated in a flash of blue-white energy, taking 2 pursuing hegemony ships with it. Chen closed her eyes briefly. Rodriguez had been a friend from academy days. Enemy formation shifting. Sato called out suddenly. They're breaking cohesion. Multiple vessels firing on their companions. Chen straightened in her chair. On screen, the tactical display showed the impossible. Hegemony vessels turning their weapons against each other, their once perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Some ships drifted aimlessly, weapon systems offline, while others executed random maneuvers that brought them into collision courses with their allies. "What's happening?" demanded Captain Volkov. Dr. Reyes, who had insisted on remaining on the bridge, laughed with wild, desperate hope. "They did it. The coordination node is down." Chen opened a fleet-wide channel. "All vessels, this is Acting Admiral Chen. The enemy command structure has been compromised. pressed the advantage. No mercy. The human fleet surged forward with renewed purpose, tearing into the disorganized hegemony forces with precision strikes. Ships that had seemed invincible minutes before fell to concentrated fire, unable to coordinate their adaptive defenses. Hours later, Chen stood in the observation deck, watching as cleanup operations began across the battlefield. Of their original 97 ships, only 39 remained operational. The hegemony presence in this sector had been completely eliminated, a victory unprecedented in the colonial records. Major Hassan's strike team and the disguised retribution were gone, presumed lost in the destruction of the coordination node. Their sacrifice had saved not just this colony, but potentially Earth itself. Dr. Reyes joined her at the viewport. "What happens now, Admiral?" Chen turned to face her. "Now we go home." 3 weeks later, the battered human armada emerged from Fold space near Earth, escorting the colonial vessels carrying the survivors of the Ascendancy. Concord representatives immediately surrounded them, demanding explanations for the fleet's unauthorized departure and the existence of weapons technology humanity had claimed was merely theoretical. In the emergency session of the Galactic Concord that followed, Chen stood before representatives of 27 species and told the truth, all of it. The secret fleet, the forbidden weapons, the hidden colony, and the hegemony threat that had methodically exterminated countless civilizations and would eventually have found the Concord worlds. The diplomatic crisis that followed was fierce but short-lived. Faced with evidence of an enemy that had destroyed entire species, the Concord voted unanimously to reorganize its defensive strategy. The human combat armada, once a dark secret, became the foundation of a new unified galactic defense force. 1 month after their return, Chen, now officially promoted to admiral, stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned Vigilance, watching as shipyards across the solar system constructed a new generation of warships. Beside her, Dr. Rice studied star charts where hegemony territory still spanned vast regions of unexplored space. "We've won a battle," Chen acknowledged, "but the war has just begun." She turned to face the representatives from 27 Concord species who had come to learn humanity's methods of warfare. These diplomats and officers who had once viewed humans as junior partners now looked to them with newfound respect, and in some cases, fear. "The hegemony has existed for millennia," Chen continued. "They operate on timescales we can barely comprehend. They will recover, adapt, and return. And when they do," asked the Alluvian representative, his crystalline form catching the light from the distant sun. Chen smiled grimly. "They'll find a galaxy that's ready for them." The emergency signal that had summoned humanity's deadliest combat armada had done more than save a forgotten colony. It had transformed humanity's place in the galaxy from newest member to essential defender. Perhaps this had been the Ascendancy's plan all along. As Chen surveyed the fleet taking shape before her, she felt the weight of Admiral Wei's final order. Continue the fight. No matter what happens, humanity must survive. And survive they would, not just as members of the galactic community, but as its most formidable protectors. The galaxy would remember that when faced with extinction, humanity didn't just fight back. It changed the rules of engagement entirely.